Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Spoiler Warning Podcast. This is a review of Barbarian. I'm Christopher Schnese.
And I'm Stephen Miller.
And if you're joining us for the first time, the Spoiler Warning Podcast is a weekly film review program. Each week in the show, we're going to dive in, debate, discuss, and argue over the latest films coming to a theater near you. This week, we're catching up on something we may have seen a week ago, but we're here to talk about a little film called Barbarian, which is, maybe a film about how Airbnb rentals can, not go as you would have expected. I was joking with you, Stephen, off air about how it would have been funny if we saw this together a few weeks ago when we were actually in an Airbnb together hanging out. It'd be interesting to force you to watch a horror film about an Airbnb gone wrong and then make you come back to our Airbnb and sleep the night through. But when we checked into that Airbnb, we had a keypad which just led us into the door. And I think I remarked at the time that it blows my mind that people just have Airbnbs. Because how often do you honestly think they change that code?
It's a good question. It depends on if the code is connected to some kind of easy Wi-Fi related thing or not. If it is, I imagine there could be a security service that is rotate the code every X days or whatever. Otherwise, never. They just never change the code and it's on our system.
Yeah, which is crazy to me. Because I get it if you had a lot of those, they're like HomeKit enabled locks that let you send somebody a wallet key with an expiration date. And it's not like you are saying your code is 7255. It's like literally a thing that you accept in your Apple Wallet. Then you walk up, wave your phone on the door, and it lets you in. And then that will not work after a certain time and day.
Right.
Those kind of systems, I would feel good about. Obviously it would have to be one door that supports both platforms to allow people to actually do it. But every time I stay at one of these Airbnbs, I'm always just a little bit sketched out. I love the convenience of show up whenever I want. It could be 2 a.m, even though I was able to check in at 4, and I just walk in and punch a key and enter. But also I always wonder, it's real easy to get inside this place. And I feel like after we check out, I could still punch in that number and it would work. And it just sketches me out a little bit.
It's true. The convenience outweighs the sketchiness to me, because I remember the old days of using Airbnb in 2013 or 2014, where I would land in a place and I would land late and I would have to be on the phone coordinating with the person when we could meet up. And in the meantime, I'm just standing there with a suitcase or looking for a McDonald's to chill out in or whatever. So compared to that, I love the key code thing. But it's interesting because I was glad to not be in an Airbnb while watching this movie. But basically, I would just say a home is scarier than an apartment, right? Ghosts don't live in apartments. Scary things don't happen in apartments.
Stephen, you have long touted this as a thing to be true, that ghosts don't live in apartments. But ghosts definitely live in hotels, right? You would agree that ghosts haunt hotels?
Sure.
And what is the difference between a hotel and an apartment, other than you permanently live there instead of just checking in and checking out in a short window?
The difference is that the building, an old hotel, a ghost does not live in a new hotel. A ghost has never lived in a Best Western. Never. A ghost has lived maybe in some historical hotel, that is a building that they have not touched, where all they've done is basically taken an old giant Victorian or whatever and called each room, a room in the hotel. I believe a ghost lingers when more than 40% of the original floor plan is in place. At a certain point, the ghost is fuck it, I'm out. There's nothing for me here anymore. You saw a ghost story.
There's notes in the wall. Yes, the building you live in is relatively new. But, Stephen, there's that empty lot next to it, which is sort of just a hole. No one's ever developed there. You ever wonder why? What if that's an ancient burial ground or something?
Probably. I can see that. No, if I lived on the first or second floor, sure, maybe a ghost would get
Ghosts
here.
Plenty.
Yeah, ghosts don't have time to get to the 6th floor. They got shit to do. Yeah. I don't know. I've never felt scared. But a house is just so open. There is a backyard. There are windows that are street level. There is a door that is street. There's just more things that can get to you. And that is inherently scary. So I won't lie. It made me kind of be maybe I want to live in a condo. Yeah.
Good times. All right. Well, enough talking about our experience with Airbnb. Shall we get into the experiences of young women in Airbnb?
Yes.
All right. We're going to take a listen to the trailer for Barbarian, and then we're going to come back and give everybody a review.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
This is 476 Barbary, right?
Yeah, I'm renting this place.
No, I booked it a month ago.
Are you sure you have the right place?
Yeah. What am I supposed to do?
Why don't you come inside and we'll call these idiots. Why don't you just crash here?
Oh, no.
I don't know if you got a great look at this neighborhood, but I don't think you should be out there by yourself. It's dry and there's a lock on the door. By the way, I'm Keith.
Tess.
You take the bedroom and I'll sleep out here on the couch.
God. Keith?
This process might seem overwhelming, but with a little practice, it can soon become a pleasurable experience. This is perfectly natural.
All right, so that was the trailer for Barbarian. Reading the description from IMDb, a woman staying at an Airbnb discovers that the house she has rented is not what it seems. Stephen Miller, what did you think of Barbarian?
So I decided I would go in blind to this movie. I don't know why. I'm a sucker for punishment. We all know, well established, I do not enjoy horror movies. I particularly do not enjoy jump scares. I don't enjoy the kind of thing that will like linger in my brain, that will make it hard to sleep at night. And when I do watch them, because you make me for the podcast, because the episode number is 666 or some shit like that, I
713, unlucky. Woo.
Yeah. Ooh. The way I do it is I will watch it on like a Saturday morning in my living room with all the lights on, with like a distraction nearby. So if a scary scene is happening, I can be like, "You're okay. You're fine. Look at coffee." You know, like something like that. That is how I live my life. For whatever reason, this time I was like, okay, I'm going to say yes to this movie. All I know is the name is Barbarian. Chris wants us to see it. I am going to schedule a Saturday night Alamo screening of it, knowing nothing, and go to bed right after. Like that was the plan. And I hated this movie in a way that means like I love this movie. Like this movie did really well at the horror roller coaster thing that it set out to do. And even though I hate the feelings that it left me with in the moment, I thought it was just like an amusement park ride, and being in a crowd of people all experiencing it together. Like it was a packed show at Alamo. Like if not fully sold out, it felt very close to it. Like this was a big draw, and there was something about the experience of no one having any idea what the hell was going to happen that just was really fun, and a kind of communal experience that I haven't felt in all of our horror movies rented and Saturday morning, you know, in my living room experiences that I've had so far. I had a lot of fun. I think this is a movie that it would behoove you to go in knowing as little as possible. But it turns out I had known something. I just forgot that I knew it. I had seen the trailer at some point in my life. And I knew I'd seen the trailer because at some point while I was watching this movie, I was like, weird, this movie feels familiar, but there's a certain actor from a famous commercial series a decade ago that my brain really wants to be in this movie. And I don't know why. So it had been planted in my head, but watching the trailer afterwards, I've verified that, yes, I have seen that before.
Yeah,
and
for
also,
like 4 frames.
Right. And it does such a good job of not showing all of its cards that I think even if you've seen the trailer, you are still in for a roller coaster. I just think it starts with a very basic premise. You know, we have seen a similar thing before in The Rental, the Dave Franco movie from 2020 that we watched that also takes place at an Airbnb and talks a little bit about the fear inherent there because you don't know what else might be happening there. You don't know who else can come in. But this movie takes that, it combines it with a sort of interesting, like, gender dynamics, you know, in particular how the character of Tess would feel in, like, an environment where she can't control who else can enter. It ties that with this whole kind of interesting commentary on, like, Detroit and the way that certain neighborhoods have been abandoned over the years. And it puts that all together in a thing where you don't know which way it is going to go because it has like 4 different ways in any scene that it could go and still be true to the heart of the narrative. I just think it is a movie that it has so many ideas. It is willing to go as far as it goddamn wants to go. Yeah. Like, I don't know that there's a line in this movie. And it also does something that, frankly, I like, though maybe a horror purist would not like, which is by the end of the movie, it has amped up the craziness enough that you, or at least I, did not walk away scared anymore. I was like, I had my scary time, then I had my adventure time, then I had my laughing time, and it was like a whole experience wrapped up where I honestly went home and still slept like a baby. So for me, this was a kind of ideal horror roller coaster because I was watching it through my fingers, I was cringing, like it was doing all the things that I was afraid it would do to me, but then it still left me feeling satisfied at the end. So yeah, I had a lot of fun with it, and I would have to go in spoilers to talk about more, probably.
Yeah, I think it'll definitely be worth having a small spoiler segment at the end, just to at least talk about a few things. But yeah, I had an amazing time with this film. I mean, I was already kind of interested in it. Maybe it was just because we just got back from another trip, and I was still thinking about how creepy Airbnbs are, and like, how do we even trust that everything, like, every Airbnb I stay in has like 7 doors that I can't open, but sometimes I hear stuff on the other side of the door. Like, sometimes it's because the Airbnb is connected to somebody else's house. Other times it's like, the last person who stayed here could be in that closet. I don't know. It's locked. I can't get in there. So there's always something a little bit creepy about an Airbnb. But this film starts off, and like, you know, the first part of this film is essentially the short film version of exactly what we see in the trailer. And that is executed so perfectly. You know, like when you just watch the premise of this film, in the back of your head, if you're a normal human being, you might be thinking to yourself, it's an Airbnb. Just GTFO. Like, like this film better this film better convince me why she stays. And to this film's credit, it does an amazing job of that. Like, this film understands the scenario it's in, the character, who she is. You understand all of her motivations. She doesn't make terrible decisions. She makes maybe some reckless decisions, but it's all for a purpose that is greater than just the decision that she is making, right? So it's like you feel an understanding for why she's willing to go back into place when she might be not in that place momentarily, right? Like, you understand her motivation. And I love what this film does with, like, you know, subverting your expectations a little bit. Like, you know, the film is, it goes against that line so tightly of, like, you know, when you're watching a film, you know, characters say something and you're like, clearly this is a bad, evil person that we're watching right now. Like, anybody would know that this person is creepy and scary. But this person she is interacting with in this Airbnb everything is so against that line where it's like, oh yeah, of course he would say that. And you're like, oh no, that totally 100% makes sense.
It's the exact, like, not uncanny valley, but it's the thing where it's just like exactly on that border between what a normal person would say and what a serial killer would say.
Yeah. And it's like the whole time you're watching, you're like, oh, either this guy is clever as hell or he's just a good guy. And we don't know what it is, and you're just watching with so much suspense as you're going. And all the prolonged, drawn out scenes of staring down dark corridors and wondering if something's there, and like everything there is just chef's kiss, perfect way to present this horror film. And then this film sort of introduces a bunch of extra information partway through that just completely, like, it just, I don't even know the expression I'm reaching for right now, but it's suddenly you're watching kind of a completely different film that is also brilliant in its own right. And the way it sort of melds these two different stories together and the understanding that you get of who these characters are, what they're doing in this situation, and how the people they are would allow them to interact in a particular situation just becomes a thing that, like, by the end was just like pure joy. Like, I have some questions about the origin of what's going on here and what that means. And sort of like, there are characters that give, we were introduced to more characters as the film goes on, and some of those characters give exposition, but that's also just a person's idea of what's going on, right? Like the characters that truly know don't ever say it themselves, but there are other characters who are like, yeah, if you do this and this and this and this enough times, you get this, right? Like there's...
Yeah, which does make me want kind of the historical record of the movie.
Yeah.
Because I need to do the math on how many times one can do that.
But yeah, it's sort of, it's interesting where it's like, we don't ever really know the origin of what we're watching. We're just watching, we just have enough information to understand why what's happening now is happening. And I think this film does a really, really good job of just kind of like playing in the space, trying to be funny in a cringe way, or at least funny about a cringe character, and then at the same time like scary and horrific and like good at building tension. And it sort of balances those two things together. And I think that this is just like it's just a really fun movie to participate in and watch, and it definitely goes places that you're not really expecting.
Definitely, it basically, you think. I hate, because even acknowledging that this movie has twists and turns feels a little bit like I'm ruining some of the surprise of this movie, but it basically, like, you said it perfectly. It begins as a short film of the trailer, and then at a certain point, it just like smashes into a totally different story that still connects with the first one. But I don't think you can predict this movie. I would be very impressed if somebody walked in and was like, I know what's going to happen. It just doesn't fit that. I think the cast all do a really great job playing the roles they have to play.
Yeah.
Bill Skarsgård, we'll get into in spoilers maybe to perfectly have to explain it. He is obviously, to your point before, the person who is either the world's creepiest guy ever or a totally normal person, and I think he plays that ambiguity for exactly as long as he needs to very, very, very well.
Yeah.
Georgina Campbell, who plays Tess, the main character, she is, like, to your point, this movie has so many don't open that door, don't go in there, what the hell are you doing moments as an audience member. And every time it also has this scream, like, I'm going to acknowledge this. I'm a character who has seen horror movies too. you know, here is why I'm going to do what I'm doing, even though I know it's a bad idea. And it just, like, she is very good at being relatable and doing the things the plot makes her have to do without ever feeling like a person the audience can't connect to anymore. I think she's really, really great. And then person who I don't even want to talk about being in this movie does a wonderful heel turn that, again, I think we can just get into in spoilers, because this is also kind of a Me Too movie. It is just doing a lot of things at the same time. It's just it is a ride. Like, I can only think of it as a ride, not even a film. Like, I don't know what it would feel like to watch it again. I don't know what the meaning of it is in the end, but the the 2-hour experience of sitting in a crowd of people, just seeing whether it's going to go up and down or left or right, like it's just a total blast.
It feels like the second part of this film that you're talking about is something that maybe producers question the viability of, and like they made that first chunk. Like the reason why I say it feels like its own short film is because it feels self-contained and like its own entire piece that could be played in isolation. And it feels, and this probably is not true, but it feels like, you know, studio got the script and was like, I'm not sure. And they're like, well, let us just make the first part. And if you like that, we'll make the rest of it, right? Because it just feels like that first part is executed so well that it like it justifies whether or not you stick with everything else this film does. It like has done all the heavy lifting to get you invested in it, and now it's like, what are we doing now? And then you kind of just are along for the ride at that point. And I feel like it earns its time through it. But
no, I don't know the origin story of this movie. I think if nothing else, that first half is like the director Zach Cregger saying, I can make a perfectly executed horror movie that is just the creepy dread version of horror that, you know, Blumhouse would have me do or whatever. Like, I can do that. I'm going to prove to you that I can do it. We know we could have dragged this out the whole movie. You and I both know you would have watched all of it. You would have begged for more Piggy. But then he's like, okay, having gotten that out of the way, let me show you what else we can do. And I think at that point, there's just a lot of joy in it because you know the movie is going to deliver. Like you just know, like they know how to play you already. And to me, that is just the fun of it. It's kind of like a trick shot or whatever. It's like, yeah, I can do the right thing. Now let me hop the ball over the 8-ball instead, you know? And it's fun.
Cool. Well, it sounds like we probably want to get into spoilers pretty soon. Stephen Miller, should we get to some verdicts first?
Let's do it.
All right. For our pre-spoiler verdicts, Stephen Miller, if you were going to do this, say must-see, recommend with a caveat, wait for rental, pass with a caveat, or must avoid, what would you give it?
So I've been gushing about this movie in the non-spoiler section, which maybe will make it seem weird that I'm just going to give recommend with a caveat. I think some of the things involve nitpicks. Maybe my inner Schnese turned on a bit in the second half of this movie, where even though I did have so much fun the whole way through, by the end of the movie, I felt like the zaniness of it maybe deflated the movie as like a lasting message or like a lasting idea that would stick with me. So I think ultra fun roller coaster ride while you watch it. Maybe not the kind of thing that you are going to remember for a very long time. And I think that is a consequence of the fun the director decided to have. So I don't fault it for it. It's just like, it keeps it from hitting the high of like the truly creepy horror movies that like ruined my month when I watched them. This feels much more like a theatrical experience, which would be my caveat. I have no idea how it plays alone in your living room, but theatrical, tons of fun. People should definitely go check it out while they still can.
Yeah. I honestly am also in the recommend with the caveat group. I think this film is incredibly fun. Beginning is executed perfectly. The later parts are a wild ride in and of themselves, and I think all of that is very, very fun what this film is doing, and I enjoyed it. It definitely wasn't perfect, and like the explanations that we get I don't buy because of like the characters who are explaining what's happening are sort of unreliable narrators. So I don't think this film is perfectly executed, but I definitely enjoyed my time with it, and I think some people might not come along on the journey this film wants to go on, so that's kind of the main reason for the caveat. Just because, some people are going to watch this and be like, what the fuck am I watching? Why did you tell me this was a must-see kind of situation? So it's recommended with a caveat. Caveat being, you just got to go with it.
Yeah, you got to go with it. And again, like you got to go with it in a way that I am not sure if I were sitting on a couch with my phone next to me or whatever, I would be willing to. Like, there's something about completely submitting yourself to a movie that is just so much easier in a crowded theater than it would be in another setting.
Yeah.
And I don't know that without having to submit to it, the movie would really pull me along for that final, I'll say like the craziest 30-minute stretch at the end.
Yeah.
And I'm glad it did. Like, it's a wonderful experience when it does, but your mileage may vary depending on your viewing situation.
Yeah, and I will say, too, that, like, there is... Not only is, like, the swerves in the plot something that might be hard for people to grip onto, but there is an entity in this film. And I think that, you know, this film does not take the Jaws route of it's scarier if we don't show the shark, right? This film shows the shark, and I think the shark, the way the shark is presented is once again on that line between something that people might find goofy and people might find scary. It's sort of playing in that sort of generic space where like I can easily see somebody seeing it and being like, that's fucking dumb. So it's kind of like you have to come along with the ride, with the story, and you have to come along with the shark they decide to give you. And so it's two things that are working against this film working for everyone. And I think as long as you're willing to sit along with it and ride with it, you're going to enjoy it. If either of those two things bothers you, there's probably not a good recovery for you in this film.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with the showing the shark thing. And that is also exactly why it didn't ruin my weekend after I saw it. And so I enjoyed it, right? It's going to be a weird comparison because there are tons of real horror movies to compare it to instead. But to me, what it brought up was my feeling watching Signs when I was like younger when it happened, where the Signs is creepy when it is the bushes are rattling and something is in the cornfields and you don't know what it is. It is like disturbing and anything can happen and it's very scary. When it becomes we're just going to show you the thing and now it's about how you defeat it instead, it is still a very fun movie, but the memory of how creepy the beginning is gets washed away. And that is kind of how this one felt.
When it becomes Swing Away.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then you're like, you had me until Swing Away.
Right. And this movie basically becomes Swing Away. But unlike Signs, or a more recent example that a lot of people loved was The Babadook, where for me, the final 15 minutes of The Babadook showed the shark to a degree where I was like, oh, I'm not going to have nightmares. I'm okay with that shark. Like, I can live with it. And this is like that, but instead of the last 15 minutes, it's like half the movie. Yeah. And that is just an interesting formula that I haven't seen a whole lot.
Yeah. What you're saying is you don't like the Babadook.
Like, that was scarier than Barbarian.
Which only makes sense if you've seen the movie. Yeah. All right. That was our verdict for this film. We're going to do a little pre-spoiler goodbye for anybody who doesn't want to stay along. So, Stephen Miller, people want to find you throughout the week. Where can they do that?
People can go to twitter.com/sdavidmiller or sdavidmiller.com.
People can find me at ChristopherInRealLife.com or Twitter.com/ChristopherIRL. You can find the podcast over at thespoilerwarning.com where you can get a bunch of the back episodes of the show. If you want to subscribe to the show, you can do so in Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, or wherever podcasts are found. If you want to know the episodes go live, you can follow us at Twitter.com/SpoilerWarning, Facebook.com/TheSpoilerWarning, or Instagram.com/TheSpoilerWarning. If you want to get hold of us directly, you can send an email to fans@thespoilerwarning.com, or you can use the contact form on the site. Music for this episode will come from a track selected from artlist.io, so hopefully you're enjoying that track. It is playing now. That track is going to fade up, and then it's going to fade out. And you better watch out, because when it fades out, there'll be something in your house. And it'll be scary. So, spoilers coming at you. All right, we are back. Spoiler territory. It's the after part of our review of Barbarian. We're talking full-blown spoilers for this, so get ready. We're walking down into the basement, walking into the little hidden crawl space, and we're going to talk about it. So, should we start with a conversation about the shark, Stephen?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So we have talked in the past. Earlier we were talking about Signs. There's the Visit. No, was that the
Visit with Shyamalan.
Yeah. So when we watched The Visit, we talked about, like, there is this horror trope that old naked women are real scary.
Right. Oh, yeah. The Visit, by the way, still scares me. When I think about The Visit of the, like, old naked lady crawling under the crawl space, I just got scared.
Yeah.
I just, like, I had to like turn around and make sure she wasn't there.
Yeah. There she is. But yeah, so like this film is using that trope, but it's also mixing in a little bit of that banned episode of the X-Files with the family that's been just living in the house, like inbreeding for a long time, and it's sort of
I've never seen it, but it sounds very relevant.
Yeah, I got a lot of vibes from that episode. I should have looked it up before we sat down to record, but there's an episode of the X-Files that aired one time and then was like pulled from syndication because it was like too crazy, and it was about this family that had been like living in this house, and the family was living on together. Sure. In this house, and every time people came in, the house was all booby trapped, and they'd like murder anybody who tried to come in and take the mom from like the stretcher that she was like strapped into. Spoilers for that episode of the X-Files. But yeah, so
weird. I've also seen movies about families doing that with each other that wouldn't be allowed to be aired, but those weren't scary. That was a porn joke. You can cut that.
It's like we're talking about House of the
They're all
Dragon.
step siblings. This movie should be called House of the Dragon.
But yeah, so what did you think of the shark? I already hinted that I thought it was a little bit goofy looking, and it kind of took me out a little bit, but I was willing to run with it. What did you think of naked 7-foot tall mama or mother?
Baby shark. I'm glad that caveman Nick Kroll is getting work still. Like that, that makes me feel good. It's okay. Like it's impossible to talk about the shark without talking about the first introduction of the shark, which, to my knowledge, up until this point, we have seen doors open and close and we have heard things, but we have not actually seen any proof that a physical entity is here.
Yeah.
Like up until now, it could be a demonic presence, a spiritual thing. It could be the house itself. It could be Bill Skarsgård is somehow controlling the house, like all sorts of things it could be.
Yeah.
And in this moment, when Bill Skarsgård is definitely fucking with her, or so the audience member me felt, and she is coming down, walking into this creepy fucking underground lair, and he is calling to her like Pennywise, trying to get her to come so he can then kill her or do whatever. And then, out of nowhere, she sees just him. He's fine. They're having a conversation. He felt something. And then crazy-ass naked lady runs up and bangs his head against the wall until it smashes. I love the shark there. I think that level of revealing the shark is great.
Yeah.
It is one of those things, like a lot of CGI in movies or whatever, where when it is dark, when you can't see it all the way, when motion is involved, it helps. Over time, when we then see the shark in like well-lit long takes while she is, say, breastfeeding Justin Long or doing things like that,
which is
I
brilliant
was fine
for
with
many
it.
reasons. But
I was fine with it in a way where I felt like I was watching like a fucked up Goonies or something, but I was not afraid of it anymore. And that is why the movie basically did a 180 from this is creepy horror to like this is a zany action thrill ride. And like it basically flipped into like the newer Predator movie or something, not Prey, the last one that was like a retro fighting the Predator. And I remember it's just like wacky and silly and fun, but not disturbing. Like I didn't find the second half disturbing at all, but being not disturbed didn't bother me. Like I thought it was fine that it was just a creepy looking inbred woman. And I think if the movie had been going for horrific, it failed, but I don't think the movie is going for horrific anymore. I think the movie has other things it's trying to do.
Yeah. I want to back up for a second on something that you said, just because you made a statement about even at the point where she's going down into the cellar and the hidden crawl space and all this stuff, even then you thought potentially Bill Skarsgård was still fucking with her and was still the bad guy.
100%. I've seen him court someone down into a basement with his voice asking for help, like, and then eat them. I've seen that happen before.
You'll float too. But because here's the thing is, I thought one of the most brilliant, because we already talked about in the pre-spoiler section that like every line he's delivering is just on that edge of like, I can't trust this guy versus, okay, he's kind of making sense. Like, even when he's like, can you please just come into the basement with me? And she's like, no, I'm going to get the fuck out of here. And he's like,
right,
please, just in case the door shuts and I get locked in like you did. And it's like, oh, well, that's pretty reasonable. You know what I mean? Like, he's just on that border. But like, so even there, it's a little bit creepy. But the moment that scene in the trailer where the door opens and you hear the footsteps running, and then she like pops up and she looks and she leans out and he is having a nightmare on the bed. That's when I was like, oh fuck, they just totally didn't play a trick on us. He's just a normal guy. Oh my God. Like, that's when I started like,
interesting.
Like,
I did not have that. When she saw him, I was just like, okay, this is supernatural and he's still involved. Or maybe it's like the Black Phone. Sorry, I don't want to spoil other movies, but like, at the very least, he is related to the bad thing, even if he is maybe not consciously the bad thing.
Yeah,
you
okay.
know,
It's like
that was my MO 100% through the movie until the halfway point when he is smashed against a wall.
Okay, so you were operating under like there's other horror films which I won't throw out the title of the film because I don't want to give it away, but
right.
there are films where like somebody is trapped in a place with another person, but it turns out the other person who's trapped there too is actually one of the people that trapped them there, like that sort of situation. So that's what you were okay.
Yeah,
I guess that makes sense. I guess I felt at that point it was like the film wants us to totally not trust Bill Skarsgård, and then it's just constantly scene after scene after scene where he is being shown to be like not as creepy as you might expect. Like, I don't know. I like that aspect of it at first where it's like, of course he's going to be the bad guy. Like, there's this defenseless woman right here. It must be this really, really tall, handsome man that's going to be the evil person. And then it's like, it's constantly trying to throw that on its head and show that like, hey, maybe you shouldn't just assume this guy's bad because maybe he's okay.
See, I think it is intentional stunt casting, I think. If not specifically a reference to it, then at least, you know, Bill Skarsgård is handsome, but he ain't Alexander Skarsgård. You know, he's got beady eyes. He's got a look about him. The movie knows that you believe he could be a super creepy person. And I feel like the movie wants you to believe that long after we see that he is having a nightmare while the door is closing in the background, right? Like, I feel like the movie still wants you to be like, I don't know what the fuck this is, but I don't trust this guy. And especially, like, the one time in the movie when I feel like a character does a thing that I do not understand is he is at an Airbnb. Why does he want to go down and investigate? Why won't he just leave? Why is he invested in this thing?
Well, I mean,
and that is where my head was like, he's trying to trap her. This is his, like, he's up against the corner now and he's doing his one Hail Mary to still get her down there, you know?
Well, hey, but put it in reverse. No, actually put yourself in his place. You rented an Airbnb. You're hanging out. This woman shows up. She says she also rented the place. You check her credentials. She does seem to have possibly rented the place. You let her in. Everybody's going to stay. Like, you come home from being away and she just tells you this crazy story about something being in the Airbnb that you've been in for a few days at this point. It seems like crazy, right? Like, you wouldn't be automatically gaslighting to be like, wait, you saw a crazy 7-foot tall woman? Like, I guess she didn't see that at first. She just found the room.
Yeah, she didn't. All she saw was really creepy underground area with like a killing room or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just braver than I am, but no part of me would be like, I have to go see that for myself. I would be like, I don't understand all this. Let's drive to my friend's place because I've established that I live in this city.
True.
And have a conversation when we are no longer under the specter of whatever the fuck is going on in this house.
Yeah. I mean, I guess for me, here's the question. If I believe something creepy, like, okay, what she has described is a really creepy basement. Mm-hmm. She has not described dug out tunnel that goes away from that basement into God knows what. I would never go down that fucking tunnel, right? Like, even if I'm like, even go back to like the film Men, which I'm sure we will have obvious allusions to later. But even in that, when she's standing in that, it's like the bridge, right? Where she's looking and she's going, down the little thing.
Yeah.
I would not walk into that when there's sunlight on the other side, because that just puts everything in a silhouette where I can't see what I'm walking into. That's already too much. Maybe if I had a flashlight where I could like shine and see if there's anything going on first, but like I don't like being in a space that I don't know what's in that space. A basement, I feel like if there's anything in there, it was either there before I got here or isn't there because I've been here the whole time. So it would be hard for me to even imagine a realm of possibility where there are secret fucking tunnels that go out from the basement of my place into other places. So it's like, how could I believe there's an entire underground city that links all these houses or whatever the hell is going? Like, that's not even really explained how far these tunnels go, but like something is
I just think
weird.
basements are creepy.
Oh yeah,
I think a basement is creepy no matter how long you've lived in a place.
Well, it's because every horror film ever, that's where all the stuff comes from.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I also don't quite understand the geography of what happened to him. So like he went down and he did see the murder room and then he felt something bite him and then he ran in the opposite direction and kept going down, down, down.
I think he first went down, down, down into the dark and then got bit and ran down, down, downer. And then was like, okay, well, it's not over here. I need to, and then started hearing her scream. And he was rushing to her to go like, don't scream. Something bit me. And then it was like, he was just running away from a thing that he thought bit him and then was running towards her when he heard her voice because he wanted her to not also be bit by the thing that bit him. And then it turned out that was his downfall.
So can we talk about that transition? Because that is like one of probably my favorite part of the movie is
the smash cut.
She smashes his head against the wall. Ah! Smash cut to Justin Long driving. We don't know if this is a cut in time in the future. We don't know if we're about to watch this movie play out a second time with whole new people. Like that was the prequel and this is the sequel. We have no idea what is going on. Yeah. And I love that about this movie. I thought that was the moment when I was like, I have truly no idea what you are going to do to me and I don't care. And I really admired it. That was when I like sat a little taller in my seat and I was like, okay, I see you, movie. What the hell are you going to do now?
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? That's a little insider joke that only you and I will get.
Sure.
When he's in his convertible taking that call where he's basically being fired, did you get return vibes from our lift from the airport?
From our Airbnb? Absolutely. 100%. That's what happens when you're in the LA area.
Yeah, I think so. But it's just like being
movers and shakers,
being part of this awkward.
Yep.
Over the speaker in the car call that really should be a personal call that only one person has and that you aren't subject to.
100%. It was interesting though too because I feel like, and maybe I imagined this or tied the movie to men in my head too strongly. I feel like when we first see Tess and she is like driving to her Airbnb, she gets a call from someone and she silences it. And I feel like the movie is hinting that she has like or maybe even explicitly saying when Bill Skarsgård are bonding later, that she has like a abusive ex or someone who is like yet another possible big bad, like a possible cause of all of this pain. And when it cut to Justin Long later, I was like, oh, here's the asshole ex. Like now the movie is going to connect. We're going to show it from his point of view, what happened.
Oh, like what led to her trying to take the job.
Exactly, yeah. But instead, no, he's just the landlord, which I thought was a fun reveal.
But he's not even the landlord. He's just somebody who bought property in an area just because it was super cheap, but didn't even bother looking at like other houses around the neighborhood to understand why it was being sold for so cheap. He was just like, yeah, fuck it, I'll take it.
Yep.
And then he immediately turned it into an Airbnb. Oh man.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought that was fun. I also thought the movie does a great job of having a creepy moment kind of around the third way point or whatever, where Tess is walking into her house and this guy starts charging at her. Very men reminiscent again. Men are awful, scary, possible threats in this movie. But then the way it flips that later and the realization I had when I knew it was about to flip it later, I was just like, okay, movie, you got me.
Yeah.
You got me. You planted that flag and somehow it took me half the movie to realize what you were doing. And now that I realize it, it is so obvious I'm mad that I didn't know it from the beginning.
So I've already asked you about if you showed up a place, and actually technically I didn't, but I already asked you about the whole creepiness of Airbnb in general. I was going to potentially ask you about like what you do if you show up to a place and somebody else seemingly was renting it and there was a confusion there. I think the answer for us is we would just drive. Yes, if there's a convention in town, like Salesforce took over your entire city and there's literally nowhere to rent, we would probably just go to the neighboring city that's anywhere within like 30, 40, an hour drive just to find a place that we could rent. But putting that aside, if you showed up to an Airbnb and other people weren't there, but other people's luggage was there and strewn in the bathroom and a bunch of things like that, that almost seems worse, does it not?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I would not continue to stay there.
Yeah, I would.
Justin Long, but that is the unbelievable douchebaggy confidence of Justin Long, which I think is a feature, not a bug, of that character making those decisions, is he just doesn't care. Yeah,
I love him just like coming in and being like, huh, that's weird, and immediately calling somebody like, yeah, fucking some people, are people staying here? Never once does he like, I'm going to go outside and make this call and say, are people staying here? Mm-hmm. He just like walking through the house and be like, huh, this is weird. Huh, this is weird. And like all along, it's like he is the version of that character where you're like, don't open the door. But it's like
exactly, and that's why I feel like this movie has its cake and eats it too, because it shows us the tense version where we understand the character motivations, but we still wish they wouldn't do it. Yeah. And then it shows us the story again in a situation where we, the audience, are God. We know everything already, and we are just watching this fucking doofus. And I just love the comparison.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. Like the ride that we start to go on, and it takes its time for so long trying to get to the point where he's going to go down there, and we get this brilliant sort of montage of him. Like we've seen two other people go like, oh my God, there's weird fucking creepy tunnels under under the place that I'm staying.
Oh, I love this part.
And his moment is when he notices that shit, he's like, hell yeah, more square footage. Like, when he goes upstairs and opens Tessa's laptop, it starts Googling like, do basements count towards square footage? Like, that's when I was like, oh, this film is a work of genius.
Yeah, no, that was so I had forgotten about that moment. That was when the whole audience was just roaring with laughter. And that is, again, the roller coaster of this movie is like the audience is terrified, then the audience is cracking up at like a douchebag landlord joke.
Yeah.
Oh man, it was so good.
And it uses the same filmic like language to play out the joke versus the scares. So like earlier, it's just drawn out the prolonged, I am walking into a scary tunnel. I'm walking into it for longer than is necessary. Like, it becomes more and more scary because it takes its time and makes you sit and wait for any potential reveal. And like every turn, there's not a reveal, right? It's just getting longer and longer, and the tension is building and building and building. And this, we just have him finding more and more passages that he can measure with this tape measure, and it just like builds and builds. It becomes funnier and funnier and funnier, and you know that the shoe is gonna flip, turn, whatever the expression is. We know there's gonna be like a sudden drop where everything's gonna go back to Scary Town again. But it's just so hilarious watching him respond to the things that should be scary, but to him are exciting because he's trying to make a few bucks so that he can fight this sexual harassment, or not sexual harassment, this is like rape charge that he's basically been outed for. So
yeah,
good times.
Fun times.
Any do you want to get towards the like little bit of backstory that we hear about what's going on this guy and this family?
Sure. So there's two things. One is we have one or two flashbacks to a time that seems like maybe the 40s or 50s. I couldn't tell exactly when it's supposed to be, of a guy who is just like an everyday dude back, before the white flight or whatever of Detroit, when this is still like a whatever quaint but insidiously quaint seeming town. Which is kind of part of it is like the danger lurking beneath all of this supposed propriety or whatever.
Yeah.
and he is calmly getting baby-related supplies, let's say, which, hey, I've been there. I've bought a bunch of different size baby clothing for a robot to fold and gotten some weird looks at stores in my day. But anyway, he's doing that. He's seeing a friend. A friend says he's going to move. And then it slowly kind of reveals that he has abducted at least one, but probably multiple women and has them downstairs, probably having his babies.
Yeah.
Then we are told later by the guy who winds up saving Tessa's life that the woman, the quote mother, the shark down there, is the product of inbreeding, where the guy has basically just been sleeping with the woman that he captures, making her raise a baby, sleeping with that baby when it becomes a woman of age, and then continuing that trend over and over and over again.
Yeah. And now, as the film says, when you make a copy of a copy of a copy, eventually you get that.
Exactly. Yeah. And now I just don't know. It really depends on just how. I mean, the guy's already a monster.
Yeah.
But how many copies of a copy of a copy can you get to if it's like 1950s to today? I guess you can get to a lot. I guess you're right. If you really have no scruples, yeah. Yeah, that could be like 6 copies deep. Yeah, no, I take back my skepticism.
And six copies deep
realistic.
gets you 7 feet tall.
Exactly. I just couldn't believe that the guy was still alive. I don't know what gives him his strength.
Yeah, so,
he seems like he would have been like a feeble man.
So, I mean, he was a feeble man. He was stuck in that bed. But why do you think he killed himself? Like at what point does it go from him forcefully impregnating women to generate, infinite babies to he is stuck in the bed and wants to die?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't know. Maybe this last one was just so creepy. Maybe she's creepy enough that he is now just like, hell no. But I mean, he kills himself because he's been found out. I just don't know why he doesn't have the will to kill Justin Long instead. Like, when did he become so weak that he's not going to do that?
That's what I'm saying. It seems like he wants out of some situation that he is in, right? Like, it feels like...
Yeah, well, I think he doesn't want to be discovered by the police because he feels like his shame or whatever is going to come to the surface.
But like you said, he could have killed Justin Long, right? Like, if that was the only reason. It feels like he wanted to die. like he was suffering in some way himself. Or he at least had been rotting away with regret on the monster that he had made through his weird trials of breeding. I don't know. It was weird.
Which is interesting because then it does paint the monster as like a sympathetic-ish character,
Yeah.
Or at least like it's not her fault. It's not her fault. And then she just
wants to breastfeed.
Loving. Yeah. She's basically like, the Frankenstein or any other kind of monster that is like trying to show love, but then that attempt to show love is dangerous because, the world doesn't understand it.
But it's basically like
But then she does smash people's head in too.
But it's basically like it's like AI, right? The movie AI, artificial intelligence, right? It's like she is the Pinocchio character, and her only understanding of real life is that the greatest joy is a mother breastfeeding a child. Like, if you do it right, it's this beautiful bond. So she is just her only... Like, she is trapped in this, like, broken down, like, this underground passage below a broken down home in a broken down neighborhood. And the only thing she can do, like, she has her old man, who's also her dad and grandfather and great-grandfather and great-great-grandfather and all that kind of stuff. But she is seeking for something that can make her feel happy. And these videos have taught her that you need to breastfeed a child. So she is just searching for that.
Now, how many people do you think they've killed? Because the guy who lives in the neighborhood clearly knows that terrible things happen here. So do you think like lots of Airbnb people have been murdered?
That is true. I mean, there has to have been, right? There's multiple people had to have been murdered in that place.
Mm-hmm.
But, I don't know. So let's last thing we want to talk to. We don't have to hit like this film play by play, but I do want to talk about obviously the last final twist of this is like Justin Long's piece of shit man has been through some stuff and he has realized that he wants to be a better person, and he is sort of trying to like, hey, like you came back for me. I'm realizing that I have hurt people. Like hurt people. I need to be a better person. And when it comes to the end, when he realizes that like, hey, the mother can only get one of us, like I can hurt you again, the person who has like saved me forever. And if I hurt you, I can be safe, right? I almost feel the message of this film plays better if he gets away with it. Like that sort of Me Too takedown of like what is inherent in the character of a man like this, that I think that it's a stronger thing if he just walks away from this situation. It's like, motherfucker's gonna get away with it again,
right?
And like I feel like that is a stronger message than like, no, but we're still doing the horror trope thing, so like the woman has to be saved, like she has to get away, and like the piece of shit has to get it in the end, and the monster has to die, but like we'll be sad about it because like she just really wanted to have a child, and it's sad that we're going to shoot her in the face. But I feel like it wasn't strong enough in its convictions to like let the piece of shit evil guy get away with it scot-free.
Yeah.
And I kind of
I think I agree with that. I mean, frankly, I think the movie just wanted to end with the audience cheering. Basically. And it wanted that more than it wanted the bite of its Me Too commentary. But I agree. A world where piece of shit Justin Long, you know, he pushes her. They both truly do die. He, like, walks down. He looks at them. They are both dead. Or maybe even, like, she is still alive. And then he realizes that she's going to tell everyone what he did. And so he, like, whatever, shoots her, smothers her, or whatever, and then gets away. And then it's just, like, back in Hollywood interviewing about this like terrifying thing that happened and how he bravely fought a monster or whatever. Like I can totally see that ending of this movie too.
or like his great comeback in Hollywood is to make the movie version
Barbarian.
of the event he went through.
Exactly.
That's like, there's a whole spectrum you could do like that. That's the one end of the spectrum. And then this end of the spectrum would be like, he is hobbling away and those cops that gaslit Tess earlier in the film like are like, oh sir, are you okay? Do you need us to pick you up and take you somewhere? And then like they rescue him at the end, even though like she was complaining the whole time about this monster that was down there. So yeah, there's definitely ways that it could be like, stick with that message of like, can you fucking believe this guy? But it did want you to have that cheer moment of like, yay, she made it out.
Yep. Or yay, he's dead. Honestly, I couldn't even remember. I guess she does survive. In my head, the real yay is that he's gone.
Yeah. Justin, not so long for this world.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So long, buddy.
Any last thoughts on this film, Stephen?
No, it's fun. You should go see it.
All right. Well, that's our review and our spoiler conversation for Barbarian. Hope everybody enjoyed. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.